Welcome, everybody. Yes, so lovely to be here as always. I thought today I might just start off by telling a story, a story of sometimes how life goes. And the thing I'm going to invite you to look at is who is to blame? Like, who's to blame in life? Things happen to you, things happen to me, and who is to blame? It's a wonderful question for the ego to quickly come to a verdict of right or wrong. But when we step into the heart, the question becomes a little bit more difficult, a little more difficult. So yesterday, my wife and daughter and I, we went to the nursery to buy some plants. So we bought a bunch of plants and we came home and we live in Colorado, so the soil is quite rocky. I live on the side of a mountain, and so it's hard digging. and I was doing some rock work, like making a rock walkway. My wife thought, okay, well, I'll dig a hole for these trees. And after a couple of minutes of digging, she just wasn't getting anywhere. And about a half hour digging, she realized she really wasn't getting anywhere. And so she said, go ask your friend Hugo. He's a landscaper. He's a good friend of mine. And so I went down the street and I said, hey, Hugo, will you come over tomorrow? And he said, oh, yeah, I'll come dig some holes for you, Craig. And so he told me he was coming, and then he had to change his schedule and come extra early. So he showed up this morning at 7 a.m. And my wife, she said she wanted to go to Mass today. I said, okay, yeah, I'll go to Mass. But I was out, digging and planting trees at 7 a.m. and rushing out the door to get to church on time with her and Ani. And so we rushed to get to church. And when we got to church, we realized none of us had really eaten. But, that happens sometimes. And so no big deal. And then after church, my little girl wanted to play with some of her classmates from school. And so we hung out and played some more. And then I looked at my wife and I said, you look tired and hungry. Let me take you home. But I had to go to the store. And she said, no, you go to the store. I said, how about I take you home first? She said, no, just go to the store. It's a waste of time to take me home. And so I said, okay. We got to the store and, I was rushing because I wanted to get my family home so they could eat. I have a little girl and sometimes she has meltdown. She'll melt down if she doesn't eat. We know this as parents with blood sugar that, kids, you got to keep them fed or they might, start falling apart. And so I got a bunch of bags of organic dirt and some sand for my rock work. And my daughter, she always wants something at the store. So she said, Daddy, can I get this cactus? I'm like, yeah, sure. Daddy, can I get this other one? Yeah, sure. And my wife's getting a bunch of plants. And we're stacking them up on my big cart that's already full of, 8 bags of dirt. And then my daughter climbs up on top of all my bags of dirt. And she's riding it like a horsey. And I say, hey, sweetie, this is a little dangerous. I want you to get down. And she says, no, Daddy, no. I say, okay. Hey, sweetie, I think you should get down. No, Daddy, no. Like, have fun. So I say, okay. And we're walking, or I pay, and we start pushing the cart out. My wife comes and says, hey, I want one more plant. I said, oh, yeah, okay, go get some more plants. load up the van, and by the time I get the van loaded with all these materials, you'll be done with the register. And as we're going across the parking lot, plants start falling off my cart, but I can't see them because I'm pulling and walking in one direction, and I got my little girls yelling at me, giddy up, horsey, giddy up, and so, and I get over to the van, and then someone in a car is yelling at me, hey, you dropped your plants. And my daughter starts screaming, Daddy, you dropped the plants. I say, okay, look, you sit here and don't move. I'm going to run and go get those plants. So I run over and get the plants. Now, halfway between me and the plants that I'm getting, I'm watching a car drive up to my plants and then proceed just to run over them, just completely squash them. And then I'm hearing screaming from my daughter, and I'm thinking, oh crap, what is she doing? She can't be screaming in a parking lot. This isn't good. And I see a lady from, across, parked across from me. She's running to go get my daughter. And then I'm running back, and, and basically what happened is my daughter, who was sitting on this big pile of dirt, knocked over the dirt because she wasn't sitting still like her daddy told her. She was, riding it like a horsey, and the dirt fell over, bags of dirt fell over and crushed our plants. And she's screaming and crying. Dad's, kind of upset, but I'm more trying to calm her down. And then for the next, 35 minutes, like when we're driving home, my daughter's losing her mind, screaming and crying that her favorite cactus ever died. The cactus that she named Spiky. Now, I'm not certain she did name the cactus Spiky, but that's what she tells me. And, I told my daughter, I said, look, I need you to, when I say sit still, because if you're rocking all over the place, like you're doing, you might wiggle off, your bag of dirt horsey, and, you might get hurt. You might crush the plants, and, luckily she didn't get hurt, but some plants got crushed. I could yell at her and say, hey, it's your fault. I could yell at myself and say, hey, Craig, you should have been a better dad. You should have told your daughter clearly and firmly, that the cart is not a toy, which it says on the carts at Home Depot. It's not a toy for kids to play on. But I wasn't firm with her to begin with. She didn't listen to me. My wife ran back and, got more plants. None of us had eaten. Had my friend Hugo come on time, come an hour later, we all could have eaten, and we wouldn't have been out in the yard working at 8 a.m. And this is kind of how life is. We can point a finger, like I could have just pointed it all at my daughter, said you should have been screwing around. My wife could have pointed at me, said you shouldn't have left the girl. I could have pointed at myself and said I stacked too many, plants on the cart and too many bags of dirt, and I should have been a better father with more boundaries and more rules. And then if I look at, well, where did I get this from, being loose with rules and boundaries? Oh, this was a defense mechanism that I developed. It was a way of getting along and not ruffling anyone's feathers. And so when we step back and look at our life from the vast view, we look at a series of events from the vast view, we see very clearly that none of it's personal. None of it's personal. Things happen in life. It's easy to point fingers. It's easy to get upset. It's easy to blame. But where does blame start? And where does responsibility start? Who did what first? Who did what first? Like, who started this whole series of events called life? Like, who started it? And when we step back far enough and just ask this question, who started this series of events, this butterfly effect? Who started it? I say this to you, you do that to me. You know, I upset you, you go home and yell at your husband, your wife, your partner, your whoever. And it goes on and on. On and on. Into the future and into the past. It goes on and on. And the more we wake up, we really begin to see that life is not personal. It's not personal. Even when it seems like it is, it seems as if someone is being incredibly mean to you or angry to you. There was someone that was once mean to them or neglected them. When I look at my father, he didn't know how to be. He didn't know how to be a father because he didn't have a father. He didn't have a father. He had a man who was an alcoholic for his father. And that man who was an alcoholic, I don't think, was actually his real biological father. And when I get to know that fella, I realize that he drank because, he was gay in, 1920 and 30 and 40. And, that wasn't accepted back then. And so he had the trauma of that experience. He had to hide it. And he drank so much, so he wasn't available for my father. It wasn't available for me. So now I have to learn how to be a good father, to my girls. And so the more awake we are, we see that it's not personal, but simultaneously that we have a choice to take responsibility. And I don't say that in a judgmental way, but rather a way where you are empowered. It's like, oh yeah, I know who and what I am. I am not just an egoic nature. I'm not just a cause and effect, like my ancestors have been. I'm a child of God. I have a heart. I can call upon my heart to teach me, to show me how to live in this world, how to go forward in this world, how to speak, how to act, how to be kind or generous or gentle or firm, like I should have been today. I could have stopped this whole series of events by being firm. My daughter could have stopped it by listening. My wife could have stopped it by telling me, hey, we need a second cart. But again, the more awake we become, the more forgiving you become, because you realize when people make mistakes, it's because they're human. Because God gave us a less than perfect operating system. It's not necessarily our fault. It's like if we had our computer from 1998 and tried to plug it into the internet with our half a gig of RAM, it would probably be really slow. It wouldn't know how to compute. And so we're not going to blame that computer if it has trouble getting online. And in the same way, our human consciousness, our egoic brain, our animal body, it's a less than perfect instrument. is less than perfect, and it's filled with the conditioning of our ancestors, our culture. This last year we had this big event that taught us all to be terrified of each other. We might breathe on someone and kill them. And so we get these crazy inputs from life, this crazy education, and we forget what's really important. And spiritual awakening is questioning our conditioning, asking what is really important, what is truly important. And am I living in alignment with that? And if we're having any trouble living in alignment with this, we can call on the love of our heart, the strength of our hara, the clarity of our mind. And if these three centers are cloudy, we call upon the grace of God to say, Lord, you come into me. At Mass today, this is what we are doing. We're calling on the Christ to come into us, to awaken in us, to give us the strength, to go forth with compassion and love, first and foremost. Compassion and love. And in order to be compassionate, we have to learn how to see first. We have to learn how to step back and see clearly that there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. And of course, sometimes there are, and that's the paradox of life. There are no mistakes. And yes, sometimes there are. Sometimes there are. What's important is, if you look at like this question of, are there mistakes? Like, what's at the root of this question? Are we looking to blame? Are we looking to judge? Are we looking to attack someone? Are we looking to attack ourselves? Or are you willing to forgive and to step forward and to try your best? My feeling in life is that everyone is trying their best, even if nasty. The meanness is their best. And meanness has a place. It has a place. It has a place. A rare place, but developmentally, like if we give too much, we let everyone walk all over us, and we get beat up by life, and we're not connected to our power. Sometimes our power starts to grumble and get agitated and angry. And so it will lash out with meanness. And we'll feel the power and the righteousness and the strength in being mean. We realize, okay, that may be some progress out of, me just being a doormat. You stepping into your power and stepping into a little bit of meanness might be a step forward. But then again, it's just a temporary step. When you truly step into your heart, you realize, oh, okay, I don't need to be outwardly mean to others. To protect myself or guard myself. Maybe I just need to learn to speak up. I need to learn to speak up. But for many people, instead of when they go from being a doormat to learning, to being embodied and empowered, oftentimes they have to use the staircase of meanness or righteousness, as stepping stones. I wish it wasn't the case, but just like with anger, like sometimes we have to give ourselves permission to get angry so that we can discover our power. That's deep in the belly. Deep in the belly. And sometimes we need to be angry tell someone, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. In a very firm way. In a very firm way. And so anyways, are there mistakes? Of course there's mistakes. When we know better, it's a mistake. But then if we did know better, we probably wouldn't do it. And so, again, the further you step back into the vast view, the more quickly you forgive, the more quickly you let go, and the more in alignment with truth your actions are. You become more efficient on this path of life, more efficient because you're in alignment with truth. When we're in alignment with ego, it's a very inefficient way to live. So anyways, I welcome questions, from anyone. If you want to bring one forward, you can drop it in the chat. You can raise your hand. I just ask if you do want to speak with me, just make sure your question is clear and direct. I don't need a lot of details. I just need the gist of what it is. And I'm going to get to one question that was emailed in. And this person writes, "Hi, Craig. I distract myself from the present experience and spiritual practice by indulging in food and YouTube. How can I stand the present moment and do what's important?" Yeah. And so this is good. So in an impersonal way, you, my friend, whoever this question was from, I didn't see who it came from. I think it was an anonymous question. You, whoever you are, that includes all of us, we're given this body, an animal body. And the first way we learn to soothe pain as an animal, as a mammal, is to nurse. That's receiving food, receiving milk. And there's something about nursing that's really good at putting babies to sleep. One of the benefits of being a man is you can't nurse from your body. But with women, I've been up a lot of times in the middle of the night, and I'm not putting a baby to bed in the middle of the night because I can't nurse. And we're the all natural family, so we never did formula. And so, my partner, well, she would nurse, and she'd nurse the baby back to sleep. She would soothe it. So it would wake up, and maybe it had a bad dream. Maybe it wasn't feeling good. It was just a little hungry, maybe a little agitated. Maybe daddy rolled over in bed and, hit the baby with my arm or something when I was sleeping, or maybe someone was snoring and woke the baby up. But through nursing, you put the baby back to sleep. So it's a form of soothing. And so there's something here, my friend, within your body that wants to be soothed. That wants to be soothed. And, this is why we eat when we don't need to eat, is because there's something hungry within us, something starving for attention. And so if we're going to play the game of being present, can you be present with a craving for food? And if you look into the craving, don't focus on the craving. Don't go to war with the craving. But just feel into what's at the root of the craving. For many of us, there's an ache inside, like an angst, or a sadness, or a heartache, or a feeling of despair or meaninglessness. Or sometimes it's anger, and we can just put ourselves to sleep with food. And then, how about let's watch something good on YouTube. And, this is what the body does, is it wants to go back to a realm of comfort. But it's false comfort. So can we be present with the felt sensations within the body, within the nervous system, within the inner child or the psychological nature? When you're fully present with these aspects of self, they begin to feel met with love. They begin to soften. They begin to become nurtured or nurtured by your presence. Your presence. And as you nurture yourself fully, what you'll find is you won't really have any desire to overeat or to overindulge in YouTube. When you nurture yourself fully, you're happy to be alive and you're feeling the radiance and the beauty and the goodness of your heart. And so if we ever have an addictive quality, or a way, almost always addictive qualities have to do with self-soothing. And so it's important to look at, what am I avoiding? And see, now we're stepping into the path of Tantra. Tantra asks this question, what am I avoiding? And we face this thing, and as we face it and meet it with love, the very thing, the hungry ghost within us that we are avoiding becomes transformed, transmuted. And then you realize, oh, there's tremendous love within this being. There's tremendous space and peace. That this body is not simply a dumping ground for old trauma that I avoid. When you face it fully, you discover the love and the innocence and the purity of your own being. So anyways, beautiful question. All right, let's hear from Richard. Richard, are you here?
Hey.
Hi, Richard. Good to see you.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. Craig, before I ask my question, I wanted to start with a little humor that pokes fun at you a little bit in a nice way. It's not going to be vicious. Do you mind?
Go for it.
I'm so excited about this. So I did the retreat with Taylor, and on the last day of the retreat, someone was like, Craig, during the meditation, sometimes you look up and you have your arms stretched out and it looks like you're looking at something. And they asked him, like, what's going on? And Craig was like, well, you see, I'm just a regular guy. Me, old Craig, I'm just a regular guy, but sometimes the Divine Mother takes over my body and uses me as a conduit for grace to awaken the earth. But me, Craig, I'm just a regular guy, I'm just a regular guy. And I thought that was hilarious because I imagined you being in a room, like for instance, with your friend Hugo, and being like, Hugo, that happens to you all the time, right? Two regular guys here, Sometimes heaven realms wake up within me, and when they do, they wake up in all of consciousness and in my spiritual community. But I'm just a regular guy. Just a regular guy. So I just got a real kick out of that. Because of course there's a way that that's totally true, but there's also a way that that's super hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of the kind of, we're all regular human beings, but also these magnificent spiritual beings waking up. And I was cracking up as you were saying it. I was cracking up because it's your usual way of being like really humble and kind of leveling the playing field, but then talking about this really majestic, grand kind of transmission. And it was really funny. It was really funny. So thank you.
I'm glad you had a good laugh.
I did, and I hope some of you had a good laugh too. So Craig, my question today has to do with you talking about how God is evolving, and I know that this comes at least partially from the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, But I also know that, some or all sorts of people take issue with this idea of God evolving. And so I'm really honestly curious about what you mean when you say that, but also what your direct experience of that is, because I know you wouldn't say something unless you had experienced it directly. So that's my
Yeah.
question today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah, that's kind of a fun question. So, the big problem with, I'm going to call it my job, my vocation, is almost everything I speak about is a paradox, a living paradox, not a philosophical paradox, but a living paradox. Like I view myself as a completely ordinary, run-of-the-mill guy. Like 2 hours ago, I was out, working on my truck, doing, taking apart a battery, putting a new, taking the old battery out, putting a new battery in, and grease all over me. Anyone driving down the street would just, drive by Craig Holiday and say, look at that hillbilly working on his old, blackout spray painted truck, like he needs to get that thing off the road. And yeah, so that's true, but also something magnificent is happening. Also something magnificent is happening. And so the same is true, the same is true in me as in God. As God manifests as the vast absolute, the absolute. And the absolute is the formless, it's unchanging, it has no beginning and no end. And that's true. So the people who take issue that God is evolving would take issue with if I said the absolute is evolving. Now, I'm just going to just to make them be quiet, I'm just going to just agree that the absolute is the absolute. It's not evolving. Okay. But it is evolving. but let's just say it's not evolving. Let's keep things simple. So the absolute is just as it is. Vast, spacious, empty. Emptiness can't evolve. It just is. It just is. And so when people wake up to the absolute, whether it's the Buddha 2,500 years ago, or you or I, in this modern age, in one sense, we wake up to the exact same thing. To the exact same thing. And so that's true, that the absolute is the absolute. And so let's leave it at that. Now let's talk about how God is evolving. So God created you and I. And if you feel into you and I, we are God. We're one with God. Our essence is God. Our essence is God. And if you look at your life, whether it's on the level of your humanity, your personality, your maturity, your understanding, your spiritual nature, can you not find evolution in all of them? In all of them. That all these aspects of self are growing and evolving. And in one sense, in a real sense, we are the evolving edge of God here on planet Earth. We, like us in this group, are the evolving edge of God. Don't take that too personally and righteously, anything like that. Of course, others are as well. But when we wake up to evolution itself, in us, as us, when we wake up to the fact that we are God, we are God. And as we connect to our heart, and as we choose what God wants to choose, as we live in alignment with God's grace, we live in alignment with God's truth, then we become the evolving edge of God. God awake in form, God awake in matter. Awake in matter. And so we could just step back and, go into an absolute place and just say, no, all that's an illusion. The absolute is only what's real. And when we do that, we greatly spiritually bypass the human life and the meeting point of the human and the divine. We make it irrelevant. And most traditions do that. And it's not a judgment, it's just where most traditions do. They try to go directly to the absolute in one form or the other and just forget about the human. I shouldn't say most traditions do that. Most non-dual traditions do that. They just try to go directly to the absolute. Many Buddhists, many monastic traditions do this. And they forget about the human. But if we look at, well, what is the human? Is the human not God in form? Oh, it is. It is God in form. It's God's highest consciousness here on planet Earth. I'm not going to say the universe because it's clear that there's life forms way beyond us in different parts of the universe. Let's not get into UFOs right now and aliens. But if we just look at, well, what are we? We are these awakening beings. And as we grow, as we evolve, God evolves. And the experience of God, can become much more inclusive. Much more inclusive. So at the time of the Buddha, the Buddha didn't even know what evolution was. They thought life was simply cyclical, just like the seasons, that it wasn't changing. Buddha didn't know about dinosaurs. He didn't know about human evolution. He didn't know about, human evolution with technology, with each other, with relationship dynamics, and progressive values within cultures that become more and more inclusive of all of humanity. At the time of the Buddha, there was, a caste system. I guess in some places in the world, there still is. And so all this happens, all this is, pretty reasonable, pretty reasonably known. But if we take it a step further, and you look at the absolute, I'm going to circle back around. If you look at the absolute, is the absolute really unchanging? Is that true? Is the absolute unchanging? Is it growing? Is it expanding? As more of us wake up to the absolute and welcome the absolute to come more fully forward into matter, into form, does not the direct experience and the transmission and the reach of the absolute expand? You say, well, how could the absolute be anywhere? but not everywhere. Isn't it everywhere? Well, sure, it's everywhere. What was before the absolute? Oh, that's something that the mind can't even think about. And so in my direct experience, there's things that I've woken up to, like realms of the absolute, which are completely static and unchanging. But then when I wake up to different realms of the absolute, like Christ consciousness, you see that Christ consciousness is very much like the Big Bang. That maybe at one point it was a light this big, and now it's a light as big as this universe. But the universe is expanding, God is expanding. The absolute is expanding. And so I feel all this, I experience all this directly. And so this is how I know that God is evolving. God is evolving in matter, becoming radically more inclusive. God is evolving in that heaven realms are evolving, that this earth plane is evolving into a greater realm of divinity as more and more people awaken. As more and more people awaken. And so the expression of God is evolving, and we can see that clearly. So all of us tuning in from all over the world, the song is evolved, churches evolve, the experience of God evolves and has become something not just for saints and sages, like it was in the beginning, but for the ordinary individual. This is an evolution of God. As an evolution of the absolute, giving birth to more of itself in more beings who are waking up to more of it. And so, for this not to be philosophy or just a talk, just words, it's important to step into the absolute and see, is the absolute truly unchanging? And when you first step into it, that's how it appears. It appears this is not changing. It's like looking at the night sky. Night skies, you just stare at it for an hour, it doesn't really look like it changes. But as you open to begin to see what space actually is, you see that space is growing. It's expanding at an enormous speed. At enormous speed. So the sky is growing. So when you sit with the absolute, as you feel into it, and as you feel into it over many years, you might begin to notice, oh yeah, this thing is subtly changing, subtly growing, becoming more and more immense, more and more multifaceted and multidimensional. Not the quality of it. It's becoming brighter, warmer. More pregnant with life. And so anyways, none of this matters unless we actually experience it firsthand. And what you'll find is if you ever hang out with any great spiritual teachers, a true master, many of them will agree on this, that in the beginning they taught one way, that the absolute was this one thing. This one thing. But as they began to open to it more and more, as they began to witness the absolute as their very own self, they begin to realize, oh, this thing, this absolute is giving birth to itself. Giving birth to itself in greater and greater ways, greater and greater dimensions. In a sense, the absolute is the birth of all evolution. It's endless evolution. Endless. In form and in itself. So anyways, I hope there was something good in there for somebody. Yes. And again, please don't take any of these as just words. Connect to it. If the dogma says that the absolute is unchanging, experience it for yourself and see. And at first, you might agree with the dogma. When you look again and again and again, you might see that something begins to happen. in your experience of the absolute. You might feel it ever expanding, as the very nature of space is. This is what makes life so exquisite, so wondrous. So anyways, okay, let's hear from David O'Brien. David, good to have you.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Good to see you, David.
Yeah, good to see you, Craig. That was just a really cool talk that you just gave. I just really enjoyed that. Anyway, um, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the dynamics of coming into the heart and the silencing of the mind in conjunction with that.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So I'll start off with this, that most people, when they sit down to meditate, they do this thing with their fists that they don't realize they're doing. They just basically go like this, and, they're not, most people don't really, squeeze it like this, but this is like the subtle feeling. And it's a feeling of control. I'm going to try to shut this head up so I can find this thing called inner peace. And, oftentimes, like if you come see, traditional yoga teacher, a TM or something, like, hey, just say this mantra over and over. And they're like, okay, I'm going to tighten up real tense and just say the mantra over and over, try to shut out every thought. And so many people have come to me, especially in the beginning, saying, Greg, I sit down, I try to shut out all my thoughts. They say, okay, so that's not meditation, that's control. And what we find normally after a couple of days of meditation is, gosh, that doesn't work. Like, that doesn't work. Now, some people are very stubborn. They can spend a couple of decades trying to control their mind. And, again, they just have a war that never ends inside. And so if we want a silent mind, what's important is to look at, well, what's at the root of these thoughts? So in the same way, with the individual who wrote me a question about food and YouTube, and they said, I do this thing where I'm eating all the time. And, it's one way of soothing. It's one way of avoiding pain. Another way of avoiding pain is just thinking, thinking, thinking. Just, what about this? What about that? Here, there, anywhere. And you're just disconnected from the body. And so what I like to look thematically at thought. If I step back and just look at my mind, and just look at the thoughts, and say, like, what is the theme here? What is the theme in my consciousness? Are my thoughts angry thoughts? Are they desiring thoughts? Are they chasing thoughts? Are they fantasy thoughts? Are they just grumpy, irritable thoughts? Are they really sad, poor me thoughts? And let's say it's poor me. So if I see poor me within me, and I try to tell, hey, poor me, shut up, we're meditating, that's not going to work. And so I treat poor me the same way I treat a child. And look at what's going on here. What's going on? If I have lots of thought of poor me, there's a good chance there's pain in the heart. And so I direct awareness to the root of the pain, the root of the theme, the root of the issue. And I find it in my body. So I go from here, thinking, 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 to feeling, feeling, feeling. And this is where I invoke the presence of compassion. I connect with my compassionate nature. And I just ask the part of me that's feeling poor me, hey, what's going on with your body? How can I help you? Like, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Like my daughter, who screamed today for about, 30, 40 minutes, uh, she needed something to eat. She needed blood sugar. Now she was screaming that she needed her cactus that was run over by the car in the parking lot. But, I can't, that's not really what she needed. She just needed blood sugar. And so it's my job as a parent is to listen to her and to take care of her needs. It's our job as a conscious individual to look at our thinking mind like a child. Like if a child's really anxious, like what does that child need? It doesn't need to be told shut up and be given a mantra. Except if the mantra is you placing a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly, and breathing in I love you, then it's okay. So I'd like the mantra to be to soothe the suffering. When you soothe suffering, when you soothe pain, suffering extinguishes. It dissolves. When you soothe pain consciously, it dissolves. And when pain is gone, the mind becomes silent. The mind becomes silent. Now, for some of us, if we just have a habitual, like fantasy mind, it's good to have a little discipline and maybe give yourself a mantra to work with. And you say the mantra in your heart. Again, you're coming into your heart. You're feeling into the felt experience of the heart. And so not the surface heart, but deep in the heart. And you're connecting with this love, connecting with this vibration of peace, like a sweet peace, a nectary type of peace. And as you let this flow throughout your body, your mind will become intoxicated by peace, intoxicated with love. It won't have a problem. It'll become more excited about the root, the source of this intoxication, than thinking about fantasy or desire or how much I hate myself or whatever it is. And so when there's pain within the body, you meet the pain with love, the mind becomes silent. In fact, an agitated mind, a busy mind is just another word for an agitated mind. Or also, if a mind is busy, it's busy because it's agitated. When you come down into the stillness of the heart, the love of the heart, immense presence of peace of the heart, it has an intoxicating effect on our egoic nature. And basically, it soothes the egoic nature into a place where it realizes, oh, I don't need to fight. I don't need to grasp. I don't need to think, or figure, or whatever mind does. The mind has just a feeling of, I'm good. Like the ego has love. I'm good. I can sit here and do nothing, have no problem. Because I'm being flooded with love. I'm being flooded with light. It's just as though, like, I'm good. And, like if you look at getting intoxicated, like when people drink at a party, like most people, they drink and they just become like, they just like get real chill on the couch. Or they smoke something, they get real chill on the couch and they just kind of melt into the couch. It's like, I'm good. And so we can have a much greater effect if we come into our hearts and discover the truth that I am good. I am good. But for many of us, the price to pay to get to to go from an agitated mind to I am good, is we have to first meet everything within us that's suffering with love. And if we don't meet everything within us with love, what we'll find is our mind will become busy again. The same way, if I don't feed my daughter, she'll complain. She's supposed to complain. She's like, Daddy, you're not feeding me. Like, oh yeah, okay, let me feed you. Then you don't complain. Then you don't break down. Then you're not crying because you're fed. You're nurtured. And so often our mind is agitated because there's psychological pain within us. When you do your healing psychological work, the ego has nothing to complain about. It feels good as it is. It starts to grow and trust and loosen up and relax. It realizes I don't have to work so hard. The ego becomes lazy in its fight or flight response, which is good. In a sense, it says, you boss, you take over. And boss being God, or boss being our heart or true nature. And, eventually what happens is the ego deeply surrenders into being held by true nature. And when it's held, when it's loved, it becomes like a sleeping baby. It's just so happy. So happy to be a sleeping baby, nuzzled up, up against mom's bosom. It just feels that warmth and the love of her heart. Just sit there and just drool, and just sleep forever. And sleep forever. And this is what we want. It's evolution through love, not through control. There's a time and a place for control, but in our culture, we tend to overemphasize control and underemphasize the healing power of love. Love moves mountains. Control can shut things up temporarily, or control can get you on the path, or get you like a daily meditation practice and schedule. And again, that's good. But that's about as far as I take control. You just practice every day, you give yourself to this life, but then, discipline just becomes a way of life. You realize, oh, it's a lot easier to love myself than to hate myself. It's a lot easier to be kind to myself. A lot easier to be kind to others. A lot easier not to fight with my mind. So anyways, the key to a silent mind is through loving oneself completely. Terry wrote, hey Craig, could it be both the absolute and the changing are happening together? Could it be both absolute and changing together? Yeah, of course, Terry. So that is happening. The absolute is just as it is, and the changing is happening just as it is. And I'm going to dare to say this, that the absolute is growing in and of itself. It's evolving in and of itself. In and of itself. And it's not changing. So I'm going to say both and. I'll leave it at that. But again, the whole topic of absolute and evolution, none of it matters unless you experience it directly. Okay, let's hear from Justina. Let's see. Justina, here we go. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Justina.
Hello. I just had a question about, I've just been feeling really burnt out in the last few weeks on the spiritual path in general. And I guess, like, I guess for like the last 5 years or so, I've had a lot of hyper focus on it, and it's always been like important to me since I was like a teenager. But I just like feel like recently I've just like started to feel like really like burnt out or something.
Yeah. So let me just stop you just for a moment. So if I'm feeling burnt out on the path.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just ask yourself, if you ask the part of you, if you feel into the body, the part of you that feels fried or cooked or burned out, if you just ask it, what do you need? What does the burnt out part of you say to you?
I've like noticed it's like left side of my heart. It's just like I just don't. It's like just want to like lay down and not do anything.
I want to lay down and not do anything. So beautiful. So when we ask the question the first time, we'll get the egoic need. I just want to lay down and not do anything. And that's a fair enough egoic need. But if you ask it a little deeper, like in the laying down and not doing anything, what do I expect to get? Like, what do I really need from this laying down and not doing anything?
Just like rest and peace and stuff.
Rest and peace. Rest and peace. Yeah, I need rest and peace. And so we listen to this part of ourselves. So sometimes on the path, we're really hyper-focused, like you said. You said 5 years been hyper-focused. And when we're hyper-focused for too long, we become imbalanced. And then our body, our psyche, even our spiritual nature will look at us and say, hey, something's out of alignment. And so I'm going to give you the feeling of burnt out. Like your nervous system will communicate to you. Or burn out. Your psyche will be like, yeah, I'm burnt out. But again, if you just listen to yourself, say, well, what do I need? I need rest and peace. So I need, on this path, to connect, to plug more fully into the peace that's here in this moment. I need to rest more fully. I need to give myself some downtime. Maybe I need to unplug from my spiritual dogma or my seeking energy. There's many teachers that talk about letting go of seeking. And so when you feel really burnt out and your body needs to rest, like, yeah, what if I just let go of all that looking for the answer and all the healing work? Can I just lay here like a child and let God hold me? And so when I'm burnt out, I say, God, you do this path. You do this work. You nurture me. I'm feeling dried up here in the desert. In the desert. And so we all need time of rest. That's what the story was at Mass today was very much, it was very much this, that, Christ sent his disciples out to go preach the good news, and they preached and preached and, they were, I can't remember what it said. They were sharing the love of Christ and casting out demons. I remember that second part. They were casting out demons. I'm like, okay. And so they're having the good old time. And then they came back to him exhausted. Exhausted. And Christ looked at them. He looked at all his disciples and said, all you guys look exhausted. Come with me. We're going to go into the desert now. We're going to go into a place where there's no distraction, no doing, no work. And we're going to rest. We're going to rest. We're going to rest. And so Christ looked at them and said, let us rest. Many of us on the path, we only know one direction. It's forward, forward, forward. And that's beautiful. But eventually we run out of gas if we're not also resting. We're not plugged into the hugeness of life and allowing the body to be nurtured. One of the things that people don't realize is during rest is a tremendous time for spiritual integration. The body needs rest. The nervous system needs rest. We need downtime. You start to realize this, when you get, more gray hair, like me, it's like, oh yeah, we need more rest. You can't just go. I need to rest. And so this is beautiful. This is beautiful. We say, okay, let's have more rest. And unfortunately, in 2021, the way people rest is they watch Netflix all day. And that's not rest. We need to sit in silence. We need to sit in nature. You just to go out and lay in the grass and let the earth hold you. You need to go outside at night and lay on the ground and let the hugeness of the sky hold you. This is what true rest is about. And as you connect into this, you realize, you begin to experience directly that you and the earth are one. You and the sky are one. And so then even rest becomes this immense doorway to expansive peace, freedom, vast spacious consciousness. And so anyway, it's good to see you, Justina. So nice to have you. I want to say this because someone in the Sangha came to me during a session, Justina, and they said, who's that one girl, Justina? She was such a wonderful presence. And I said, yeah, she does. She has a beautiful heart. She's a bright light, bright light. As I can't remember who said it, but someone was giving you compliments, saying good things about you, just from hearing your voice, during the satsang. So you get some rest and you take good care, and we'll talk soon. Okay. All right. Let's hear from Jacob.
Hello.
Hi, Jacob.
Hi, everyone. Everyone's having a great evening or day. So my question today, I've been practicing a little bit of breath work lately, and I was curious to know your opinion on it, because I definitely feel like it, can definitely bring up some pain and definitely bring up some certain intensity.
Yeah.
And from another perspective, it is quite controlling, like to feel like, I need to do this, the breathing, and it can get me into this state. I've definitely seen, through just sitting over time and not trying to control, that you can kind of get into these states, but it does take a little bit longer. And now, I'm seeing it's starting to become a little bit bigger, that people are using these certain styles of breathing techniques to kind of speed up the process. Maybe they don't have as much time in their lives to sit for 1 hour or 2 hours, or to really, sit throughout their day without any distractions. And they might go to the breath work and they do it for, 5-10 minutes, and it kind of makes them feel good. And then they get on with their day-to-day. But I'm definitely, noticing that there is something special about it. Just maybe hear your opinion on it.
Yeah. And so, I've been trained in all different types of breath work from my teacher. He taught me all these secret pranayama, yoga breaths, and I laugh and chuckle because he taught me so many different ones. And, they can take you into different states of consciousness through focusing in a certain way. I learned transformational breath, which is real similar to holotropic breath work, really intense, like pranayama. And of course, all the regular pranayamas. And yeah, it's true that if you do something, you might have a certain experience. And the way I look at breath work is I look at it as a tool. And so when I was young on the path, I used it as a tool to very quickly step into expanded states of consciousness. And, became, quite good at it. Just lay down and do the breath very intensely and can have a pretty huge experience. I even did the rebirthing one, which is, again, similar to holotropic breath. Did it in the swimming pool and redid my whole birth, healed my birth trauma, and I had a glorious experience, of healing and unity. And yeah, so it's kind of like, well, what do you want on the path? What do you want? Are you wanting to have some experiences? Sure, do breath work. You'll have experiences very quickly. The danger is you can prematurely awaken kundalini, and then it might be like one of the people is like, why do I have all this energy in my body and I'm going crazy and my chakras are all exploding open and I can't function? And that's the danger. Beyond that, there's no real danger. Beyond that, it's I used it for healing work. I used to do sessions with people with breath work once upon a time, and it could be quite profound. The thing that I was always interested in is I wanted to know that which was permanent. I wanted to step into something in a way that would actually stayed. I wanted to open a door, and I wanted that door to stay open. And so what I realized was, I can't use force to open the door of God. I thought I could. I mean, you can kind of, open the door temporarily with force. But eventually God needs you to grow into those britches. God needs you to grow into the pants. God needs you to be able to embody it. Like nothing is free here on planet Earth. Even spiritual awakening, it has a cost. And the cost for spiritual awakening is you give it your life. So we can't just do 5 or 10 minutes and expect to be awake. If we want to do 5 or 10 minutes and have a cool experience, sure. Why not? It's better than having 5 or 10 minutes and just be having dullness, or whatever. But, spiritual experiences are fun. They're exciting. They can be a trap that people chase them. But for me, I didn't want an experience. I wanted a life, a new life. And in order to have a new life, you have to give the entirety of your life. Your time, your attention, the different qualities of egoic nature. And with breath work, you kind of cut through everything temporarily. But then, and again, you might have big experience, but then it doesn't stick. And if it doesn't stick, for me, it's kind of like, gosh, I want more of that. And so it's like, well, how do I get more of that? It has to become a lifestyle. And what you find is that as you do really begin to awaken and you look at the nature of your breath, it's very calm. It's very still. It's very natural. And when your body is taking deep, full, natural breaths, and you're filling up your lungs, your chest, your solar plexus, pushing your belly out, that you just fall in love with this rhythm of life that you are. I breathe in, I'm full. I breathe out, I am empty. You just realize that in every moment of life, breath work is happening. It's happening in and of its own accord, in you as you. And so again, I'm not for breath work or against it. I spent many years practicing all sorts of breaths. And one thing that breath work is really good at is if you are a completely ordinary, I'm going to say this, dull, I'm even going to use the word like dumb, ignorant person. And by that, I mean, you've never had any kind of spiritual experience. I don't mean it in any judgmental way, but just like dumb, like numb would be a better word. Numb to. Like if you're numb to God, if you're dumb to God, if you're ignorant to God, and you start doing breath work, very quickly you might be like, oh my God, there is a God. Like, oh my God, there is a God. Not oh my God, like, oh my God, but oh my God, there is a God. It's like, there is a God. I do have a heart. And that's what, breath work is so powerful at doing. Like anyone who does pranayama just at the end of a yoga class, they're like, oh, I just had a glimpse of inner peace. It's a real thing. It is a real thing. And anytime you do intense practices, you like do breath of fire. Like breath of fire, it's like, oh, prana, chi. That's not something that someone made up. It's flowing through me. I'm seeing lights inside when I'm doing breath of fire. It's real. And so the beauty in it is, people who don't have trust or faith, it shows them directly, very quickly, there's something real here. But then very quickly, for me, the question becomes, well, how does this reality become permanent? How does it become permanent? And it becomes permanent through surrender, not through efforting into or forcing our way into heaven, but surrendering into heaven and seeing like, oh, heaven is happening right here in my breath right now, just naturally as it is, as it is, as it is. So anyways, with any new practice, I like to dive just 100% into it, explore it fully, find the shadow side of it, find the glory and all the realms of divinity that it can awaken me to, and get to know it. And then I know for myself, well, what's this all about? What's this all about? And so anyways, so good to have you, Jacob. Yeah. Okay. Here's a question. Hi, Craig. When I do traditional meditation, I quickly enter a state of mind of extreme dullness. I feel no connection to anything, myself or God. However, I also lose all desire to do any of my bad habits, such as look at my phone or watch TV. Is there anything productive in this state of mind, or is it just escapism? Yeah, so Robbie, this is a good question. So when we sit down to meditate and we discover dullness, what I would invite you to imagine is that dullness is a blanket. It's a blanket that's covering some great energy within your body. And so your job, Robbie, is to discover what it is that blanket's covering. What it's covering. And so oftentimes there'll be fear, there'll be anxiety, there'll be kundalini energy there. There'll be sadness or heartache or self-hatred or something. So look, just imagine, like, if you're looking at dullness, just imagine lifting it up and looking under it, being curious. What is this dullness covering? It's just like anytime we have shame within us. Guilt is a blanket. It's like a blanket of unconsciousness. Shame is a blanket of unconsciousness. Dullness or numbness. Numbness means the psyche's trying to avoid something because it's afraid to feel. It's afraid to feel. And so a good question is like, what do I know that I don't want to know? It's a question that my teacher Adyashanti said to me. What do you know that you don't want to know? Like, what's hiding within me? If I feel in my heart, if I feel in my belly, what's here under this dullness? Like, what's kind of hiding out in the shadows? And a beautiful thing is when you embrace your psychology, you might find all this energy starts to be liberated through the body, through the nervous system. All this prana is released. All this repressed energy. When you repress energy, it creates like a depressed state of dullness. And so when you meditate, you might just notice this dullness. And sometimes the dullness will mix with peace and kind of become like a sleepy dullness. So there might be real peace here mixed with dullness. That's a form of psychological repression. But again, if you look at, well, what am I repressing? And you meditate on that, look directly at that. Oftentimes you'll see a lion of energy, which is like this huge, massive force of energy will start flowing through the body. And you might have tears, you might have sadness, you might have coughing, you might have laughter, you might have old memories or subconscious, unconscious stuff flowing through you. But as you continue to sit in the peace and just let it unravel, you'll be moved into a greater state of consciousness that's more vibrant and alive and full of more energy. So anyways, okay. I guess my mind is mostly empty of thought, but I can't tell if it's just dullness or something possibly good. And of course, it can always be both. You know, it can be both, that you have a really empty mind. And, you know, sometimes the psychological mind goes blank and you step into a state of emptiness. But the blankness is a kind of sleepy avoidance. So that's possible. And then there's another thing that happens is sometimes when God puts us in a new realm, the new realm first presents itself as fog. So a lot of people, you know, on the internet, they say, I have brain fog. Like there's this funny fog feeling and I can't think. And it's really important to discern, like, what is brain fog actually? Like, what's actually going on here? So in our experience, if we feel a fogginess, you know, oftentimes as God drops new realms, new realities into us, our conscious awareness doesn't first immediately recognize them. And they need a little bit of time to be seen, to be sat with. It's almost like you walk through the fog. And as you do so, the fog becomes more dense, more vibrant, more pregnant with light. And you realize, oh, this isn't brain fog. This is the experience of the absolute giving birth in me. And it needed a little bit of time to fully present itself. Like I couldn't understand what it was as it was coming into me. A lot of people who say they have brain fog is they're experiencing emptiness. It's like, oh, this is what the Buddha was speaking about. If you call it brain fog, you think there's something really wrong with you. If you realize, oh, this is emptiness. The nature of my being is empty. You have a radically different attitude than if you think there's something wrong with you. So anyways, okay, good. I think I did my part. Oh wait, there's one more question. I didn't see this. Chris Kelly. Are you here, Chris?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Yeah. If you have time for this, it's not an urgent question. So.
Yeah, but no, we're here. Let's do it.
I just noticed. I haven't explored your guided meditations in a lot of depth, but you know, you were talking to me about the kundalini energy in me as a kind of light energy. You know, I can feel it sort of as a heat, and I can feel it as a vibration. I can feel its pain, and but I do find in my meditation, and maybe this is similar to what you were just discussing. I've had visions and I've had visual phenomena, but for the most part, those things come out of the darkness to me. And I'm just wondering, it's just a pretty technical, specific question about meditating with light. I mean, it's not something I do or have a lot of experience with, but it seems to be central to some of your talk discussions.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let's speak about this for a moment here. Let's feel into it. So if you feel into heat, like what is heat made of?
mean, it's empty.
Okay. Now hold on. Before we go into it's empty, if you feel the nature of heat, isn't heat made of light? Like if you think of heat, like heat, we think of fire, it's giving off a radiance, right? Because heat's radiating, of course. So anything that's
It's radiating. It's radiating. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So I'm going to say it this way. If it's radiating, that's light. So if you're experiencing radiance, like the Buddhist term, because you have a Buddhist background, would be luminosity. So can you feel the luminosity in heat?
So it's not necessarily a visual phenomenon.
Okay, so this is interesting. Is it a visual phenomena? Well, if you feel into the direct nature of awareness, is awareness visual?
No.
No, it's experiential. It's experiential. So when I say, we're feeling this light, we're experiencing light, I'm not seeing a column of light flowing into me. I'm feeling it directly in my experience. Right. Now we can have some fun here. If you feel into light or heat or pain, isn't it also empty?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's empty. And so what you'll find is everything in life is made of light, made of emptiness. And I'm gonna say this, and it has a subtle intelligence to it. And so in the realm of yoga, we call this Satchidananda. And basically there's light, there's like a subtle radiance, there's an intelligence, there's spaciousness, peace, or emptiness. And so it's like different schools of Buddhism fight with each other, different schools of yoga fight with each other, the yoga guys fight with the Buddhist guys. But if you feel into the experience, everything is empty. But anything that has any kind of form, it has a radiance to it. Just a subtle vibration. If there's a vibration lets off heat. Heat is light. It's light. And as you feel into the experience of light, there's different forms of light. Like some light is very hot. Like this heat that you feel in your body, such as kundalini, can be very hot. Sometimes it's just very subtle light, like a gentle dancing light within your nervous system. And it feels very nurturing. Like when I was speaking to Justina about getting rest, when you feel into the energy of peace, peace has a very gentle light to it. That's nurturing to the body, to the mind, to the soul. So soft, so subtle. It's like you're drinking in, the vibration of rest. It's vibrating gently. And so, Chris, I'm going to invite you just to imagine just like feeling awareness in all the cells of your body. And just subtly feeling the felt experience of being alive. The felt experience of being alive. Can you feel that? Yeah, of course. Yeah. Of course. So that's your body. And when your body is alive, that's your body's light. It's its prana, it's its chi, its presence is light. It's just this very subtle, luminous vibration of light. Of light. And so this is what, like the Buddha would call our original nature. It's just this quiet luminosity, just subtly vibrating with light. Subtly vibrating with light. And so there's this type of light. And then, like if you experience the kundalini directly in the spine, you might feel a column of light. A column of light. And it's going to feel brilliant. It might feel burning. It might feel purifying. It might feel like this is too much. It's causing pain. There's so much light. It creates so much heat. It causes difficulty. And so that. You've told me about this. And so there's these two forms. There's the direct experience of what you are. There's the direct experience of what you are as kundalini. This kundalini is not an external force. It's an aspect of your nature, waking up and flowing through you. The big mistake people make is the kundalini is happening to me and causing me pain, versus the kundalini being this burning light within you that is you. And so that's like the non-dual realization with kundalini. And then, so those are two different forms of light. And then we can speak about this, if you come to, satsang or meditation, you might feel like this heavenly light. You might feel a grace, a transmission, whether you feel it in this moment, or if you go see, if you study the Tibetan tradition or, whatever Vipassana tradition, you go sit with a great teacher, you might realize, oh, wow, like there's a lot of light pouring through them. I feel this density of presence, like a density and an intensity of presence. Like, what is presence? Presence is light. And so during the Wednesday night meditations, as we tune in to this heavenly descent of grace, that grace begins to pour down into the original nature. And then the whole thing becomes like this whole incredibly lit up experience of brilliance, of luminosity. And so, are you getting a taste of any of that, either in satsang or during the meditations?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the language was, it's useful because it sort of moves me in a little different way, but it was also sort of just confusing me a little bit. But
go ahead.
As you pointing me to this, it's bringing up another thing which I've just been noticing, which again, I think I trust it's going to work itself out, but it's almost like I've got two bodies these days, and one is very energetic and hot, and it sort of seems to be almost hiding or making the real body go away in some sense. And
okay, now slow down here, because I thought I was following you, then I got really confused. So you said you have two bodies, and one's really hot and it's really lit up.
Yeah.
And then
I feel sort of cut off from the normal physical body at times in this experience, in that experience.
Okay, so let's say you're just filled with so much light, whether it's kundalini light or light from this moment, or just your inner light. So let's say all this is happening. Now you tell me how you feel cut off from your human body.
I guess it's just a kind of resistance is all it is.
Okay, well, a resistance in what direction? A resistance to what or from what?
It's a resistance to the energy in the body, to all that energy and heat and some of, it sometimes comes across as very uncomfortable to me. And I've realized this, but it's clearer as I'm speaking to you now so I'm resisting that, and therefore I'm no longer with myself. I'm just in the resistance with this energy. And
beautiful. And see, that's a teaching for all of us that Chris just gave us, is when we resist our inner experience, we're actually resisting our regular experience. Like when we resist, we're resisting. So if I stop loving myself, I'm unable to love you. I'm unable to love anyone. If I avoid something within me, I'm avoiding my own life, and it feels like, I'm not connected to my heart. And so anytime we resist, we become cut off from an aspect of ourselves. And so at the heart of this path it's an inclusive realization. And so we're including every aspect, the human and the divine. And these two, they work together. Like the human and the divine, we have to get them on the same team here. We have to say, hey guys, like we're on the same team. We don't need to have one resisting the other, or one trying to dominate the other. We are one and the same. We're one and the same. So anytime we resist, we shut down an aspect of the self. And so thank you, Chris, for sharing that with us. Yeah, so beautiful. So beautiful. So anyways, beautiful teaching there at the end from Chris. When we resist ourselves, we resist our experience, our body shuts down. Vice versa, you're cut off from your body, you won't experience what's going on spiritually speaking. So, ultimately, the further we walk on the path, we realize that the body, even the flesh body itself, is spiritual. And that the spiritual is in the worldly, in every single thing that's worldly. If you feel into that worldly thing directly, you'll see that thing's made of light. It's made of the presence of God. It has an innate luminosity to it. So anyways. So nice to be with each of you. Thank you all for your donations and your support and sharing your hearts with me. So lovely to be with you all. We have a wonderful Wednesday night meditation group going. I'm going to invite you all to come if you're not already. A Friday morning kundalini group if you're interested in that. I'm looking at bringing some new things on board. So if you're not connected to the newsletter, please do so. May the highest light, grace, and beauty guide you all forward. Until next time, bye for now.